Hi, and welcome to a very special Martin Done Right. Today it's going to be the first ever interview that we are going to do in this show, and with none other than Jenna Tiffany, one of the top 50 marketers in the world to follow. She's also the founder and strategy director of Let's Talk Strategy, and for the rest of the resume I need to read this because it's very extensive. Sorry about that. She's also the DMA Email Council member, fellow of the IDM, and this is just a part of everything that Jenna does. And I'm so glad she accepted the invitation to be a part of this interview. Thank you so much, Jenna. And if you don't mind to give us a more insight about who's Jenna and the work that you are doing for the few that still don't know you. So if you can share a bit more about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah, so I've been in marketing, working in marketing for more than 10 years. And during that time, I've worked with brands, worked in agencies, worked in tech suppliers. And now I run my own company, and I've been running my own marketing agency for 4 years. So we have a base in London, we have one in Lisbon. I actually live just outside Lisbon in Portugal, and we work with a big variety of organizations, small startups that are just kind of setting their foundations for marketing and just started. Maybe they've got a new piece of technology or a new product. And then we also work with large enterprise organizations like Hilton, for example, that are international global brands. And my real passion is email marketing. I work a lot on the email strategy side of things, but my agency is full service marketing agency. So every digital marketing channel, we help support organizations.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's something that I also love very much. It's from the beginning of my career in digital. So yeah, it's something that everyone knows about me. I love email marketing. And yeah, but I'm going to use that information about you living in Portugal to ask you what made you choose Portugal for your to live in, because I'm asking because I'm also the Portuguese. It's my country, so I'm very curious about that. So if you can share about what made you choose Portugal.
Yeah, sure. Everybody, all the Portuguese seem very fascinated that a Brit would want to live in Portugal. And I find that really strange, but I get asked this question so much. So the plan was to spend 6 months in London, 6 months in Portugal, and pre-COVID times, I was traveling a lot. I was traveling all over Europe and all over United States as well. And I needed a base. London's great, but I wanted to have a base where in the summer I could go to, just hop on the train, get to the airport, go to the destination I was going to for work, and then come back and just have a relaxing time after, rather than the crazy chaos that happens in London during the summer, was just getting a little bit too much. And Portugal for me, particularly Lisbon, and the connection to the airport was just really slick and really good. And I really love the country. I love the relaxed culture. I obviously love the wine. And I really like the people. I think the people are so friendly. And language is obviously a bit of a barrier at times when you go outside of the city centre. So I have 2 lessons a week to learn Portuguese, but wow, it's a very tricky language to learn. But I am trying.
I'm so glad for your choice, because it's something that it makes us very proud. The Portuguese people is very proud of how we welcome everyone, the tourists, newcomers, outsiders to our country. It's something that we take that very seriously, and we try to welcome everyone to feel at home here. So it's very cool to hear you and feel that experience. So moving on, one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you was a recent interview that you've made to, I guess, the Christopher Byrne from the interview that is doing about a day in the life of an European email martyr. And one of the things that you've mentioned was the picture of how you see email marketing here in Portugal. It was like almost like a picture that it was not very interesting for us. But it's not bad because it's the purpose for this question. It's precisely to be like a wake up call to every martyr here to the step up and to improve the way they are doing email marketing in order to stay relevant for the future. So it's a good thing. I hope you can share with us the experience that you have of email marketing in Portugal, because it's something that every marketer here in Portugal it's going to be very interested in knowing how they can improve for the future. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I hope I wasn't overly critical. I think
It's good.
okay. I like to be very, my company is very much straightforward marketing strategy. So I like to be quite straightforward in my approach. I think for me, what I see to be the big difference, particularly when working with a lot of UK organizations and a lot of organizations in the States, in the USA, is that Portugal is a little bit further behind in terms of using the advanced techniques. I think there's still a lot of full image emails. I receive loads of those all the time from Portuguese brands. I obviously sign up to lots of emails to get a good feel for what's going on, but also working with clients as well. I feel that there is still quite a big educational piece. And I feel like this is where the UK was maybe 2-3 years ago, where it was very much a batch and blast approach, where you would send the same email to everybody, you would send multiple emails a week, you wouldn't change any of your approach based on behavior, you need to get an email out. And I feel like that mentality is still very much at the center of Portugal's email marketing approach. And the UK has really started to move away from that massively. There's still obviously a lot of room for improvement, but you see a lot more journeys. You see a lot more approach to using behavioral data. So if a customer doesn't regularly open the email or they've just purchased something, that would trigger a different type of piece of content that would be sent to them rather than everybody getting the same message all of the time. And that has made email really, really successful in England in particular and in the US, where it achieves for every pound or dollar that's spent, there's 36 pounds being generated. And that's like one of the highest digital channels that are generating that highest amount of ROI. So I feel that that's a place that UK was in, and I was there, and as being a member of the DMA Council, we shaped the best practice in the UK. And I went through that in the UK with organisations to help educate, to try and move things forward. GDPR obviously had a huge impact with that. And I feel that Portuguese marketers very much want to get to that place, but it's a real challenge when there's the educational piece, because it's very difficult to change your approach if you're sending emails every single day to then say, well, actually, hang on a minute, maybe we should send less. And that's always a very tricky conversation, and one that has to be quite, you have to tread carefully with that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. And the main reason I've asked this question was precisely to serve as a wake-up call for all of the martyrs here in Portugal. It's a way for them to understand that if they want to stay relevant for the future, they need to implement the best practices. And if they do, obviously the returns are going to be much more interesting for them. So and also it's why one of the main reasons why I've oriented my companies for the international market. It was because the Portuguese marketers and top management here are not open to have this kind of discussion. So having said that, I hope this can be used as a wake up call, and everyone that listens here in Portugal can have a better idea on how to step up their game and to improve everything about the email marketing they are doing. So I hope so. In other hand, in other question that I wish to ask you is it's the forgetting about Portugal now. On a global scale, what do you see that it can be the next trends or the things that globally we are still not doing as much and we should to leverage everything about email marketing?
Yeah, so I think the trends for me are, and it's really quite amazing that I'm still mentioning this, is automation, because I've been talking about automation for so long. But when I talk about automation, it's about using it in an intelligent way and getting past the robotic, this is coming from a machine, and having that human touch to it is something that globally I feel has got a lot better, but there's definitely room for improvement. I think the challenge with automation is that it's pretty much a set and forget. So you create your journey, you then forget to review it. You think, oh, I've done that bit now, I move on because there's so much to do. And that's completely understandable. But really that needs to be reviewed every 3 to 6 months, especially now, because there's still campaigns going out, like automated campaigns, that are just not relevant in the context. And I actually got sent one the other day on LinkedIn, I think it was, where they'd seen me speak about ethical marketing, and they'd received this campaign from, it was a mobile telephone company. No, it was from a travel brand, and it was saying to them, oh, we see that you haven't traveled in the past year. Here are some special offers. And naturally the recipient's like, hello, like, I really, like, have you been here? Have you been in a cave? You know, that, and that's because it's an automated campaign that hasn't been reviewed. It was probably set up a really long time ago. And that's the bits that are, for me, still missing, that human and context element of automation. Because automation is, you know, it's an amazing tool for email marketers, but there's definitely room to grow for that. So I think we'll see, because we have to see a bigger improvement of using automation. I think customers are getting quite sophisticated in understanding that these are automated campaigns and they can tell the difference. So I think that's a big trend. I see a lot of organizations starting to focus on that. I think also tracking is an interesting area, and it's been talked about across all digital channels. Social media has obviously had huge issues with data in the past week alone. But for email, there's been a big discussion about tracking. And those that hate it call it the spy pixel. Those that are for it call it a tracking pixel. And I'm of the opinion that I don't feel that we're fully transparent that we're tracking in the email campaigns. I think there is more that we could do as email marketeers, but the technology does hinder that because you can't necessarily turn it off in some software. So I think that's an interesting area, and I think we'll see more and more conversation about that this year. And, you know, Google's turning off cookies and things like that. So I think this is an area for email marketers to take a hold of and steer that conversation before it gets taken away completely.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you again. Because what we are seeing right now is companies taking so much importance right now with first party data, and that's mainly because well, with all of the cookies that we are not now tracking, and having that on our brand itself, and not relying so much on the third party, the technology, to have that insight about our own audience, it's something that it's getting so much the traction. And maybe this is a conversation that it's going to change the way that we see email again, because it's one way to have that the connection with our audience. So yeah, it can be interesting for us, but it's also something that mainly we need to educate our audience better on how we are tracking and why we are tracking the behavior. And that's mainly because we want to deliver more relevant messages in the future. However, when that is not happening, they lose the trust on our brands and what we are doing, because we are tracking for a reason, or we should do that for a reason. So that means that we need to step up on that the communication game, and use that information, or tell our audience about the why we need to track their behavior, their opens, their clicks, whatever. Because if we understand that they are interested in a specific topic on our previous newsletters, we are going to deliver for the next ones emails much more relevant for them. So it's something that we need to communicate better with our audience, for them to understand the benefits of being tracked in that the perspective. However, it's something that they need to trust the brand to do that, and we need to respect them by doing what we say that we are doing, and not just using that to gamify their way to make a sale. So yeah, I guess it's I completely agree with you on that part. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's the value, isn't it? If you can demonstrate the value of keeping that pixel in place to a subscriber, then customers are more than happy, and lots of research demonstrates this. It's interesting about the first party data, because organizations now get valuated in terms of their worth based on their email marketing list, not for the size of the list, which is really important, because you could have, 1 million subscribers, but only one ever opens your email campaign, and it's not as valuable. Looking at the engagement piece, how often people are opening, sponsorship in email campaigns is something that's growing massively. So because some organizations haven't prioritized that first party data that you're talking about there, they've spent all of their money and resources on the likes of social media and Facebook and so on. And as trust begins to wane on those platforms, it leaves little room to go anywhere else. So sometimes then you might need to partner with another organization and their email marketing list. So yeah, it's quite an interesting space. I run a weekly email newsletter with one of my colleagues, Ben, and we get lots of requests for sponsorship, because organizations want to be able to put their brand in front of a particular niche. And if you have a list that's highly engaged, it doesn't have to be a huge list, but if you have one that's highly engaged, it's really, really valuable to organizations. So I think we'll see a huge growth in that area as well.
Yeah, indeed, for sure. One of the things they asked me on Facebook was about the Beamy implementation. It's one of the buzzwords of the email marketing scene right now. And most of the times, what they are much more interested in is to have their logo on the inbox feed. And it's a marketing thing, like to have more exposure for their brand. However, I see Beamy much more as a standard to protect our own brand, our Xender reputation. And that's because we are implementing everything about the other standards as well as a Xender reputation, like SPF, DKIM, DMARC, whatever. So it's almost like something that we can use more on the technical side and not as much on the marketing side to protect our brands as much as we can do on email marketing. And I see that more on that case. What's your take on this? What do you think about the implementation of Beamy? It's something that it's interesting for our marketers to really invest their time in implementing the Beamy implementation, or you just feel that it's not right now the best, the priority, or they should focus on other priorities. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very much a reputational, protecting your brand piece. I do think it's really important. I think that, and having your DMARC, having your SPF record, having those pieces in place makes you less susceptible to having spammers representing your brand. It doesn't necessarily stop that, but it does help to try and prevent that. And I think that's really important, because as we've just said there, emails becoming very high in demand. And when something becomes very high in demand, typically then starts to get a little bit more abused. And we'll probably start to see an increase in spam emails being sent. I've seen lots and lots, particularly from banking organizations, where they're particularly concerned that there's SMSs and emails going out pretending to be brands that they're not. So having Beamy and your DMARC and all of those authentications just help secure your reputation and your branding, so that it tries to reduce anybody trying to just copy that. It doesn't necessarily stop it entirely. That's quite a difficult thing to really outrule. But if you have all those things in place, it puts you in a really good position. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the easy parts, because it's not. It can be really technical. And Beamy in particular, just trying to get the logo to display correctly can be a real minefield. I know it took us some time just to get the Let's Talk Strategy brand up and running. But yeah, those for me are they're almost like the cleaning up areas, the bits that might not necessarily seem like really fun to do, but they're just essential, and they'll put you in a really good stead. You wouldn't want to grow your list and then not have your reputation, just displaying correctly, or having your branding display correctly and being copied by somebody else if you're spending all that effort on it. So I think it should definitely be something that's right up there as a priority to do.
Yeah, for sure. I see it more on the technical side, the benefits on the technical side than the marketing ones. However, yeah, it's a way to protect our brand, and it's almost like a certificate at the end that you have all of the steps also well implemented, or the other email standards like SPF, DKIM, DMARC, whatever, that it's all well implemented, and at the end you have the ultimate validation system, which is Beamy. And yeah, I completely agree, and it's going to be important, and we've implemented that also on our clients on that part. For another buzzword that it's also getting a lot of attention is AMP for email. And we've started doing that with some of our clients as well. And even though it's not a standard for every ESP in the world, it's something that if one of the ESPs supports it, like Gmail, it's something that we need to really take care about that. And if it's something that it's very competitive, or in this case, do you think it's going to be a competitive advantage for any brand to use AMP for email, or you just think it might be a distraction or not that important at this point?
Yeah, I think AMP is is going to grow in momentum this year. It's actually already really started to, and lots of organisations have started to test and adapt and try and use AMP. I think it kind of had a slow start because of the security issues at the very beginning, and that's what kind of hindered its growth a couple of years ago. But in recent times, it was about 6 months ago, Yahoo said that they would also support it. So that's Yahoo and Gmail, and Gmail is obviously one of the biggest ISPs, one of the biggest inboxes. So having that support is really powerful. Gmail obviously very focused on pushing it forward as well. I think from my perspective, it gives a really engaging inbox experience and it improves that. It's an interesting space when you consider that you could ultimately make a whole purchase within the email. And within search, there's lots of things changing in Google where they're starting to bring in snippets from other companies. You don't necessarily need to go to their website to go and order. And you think of the combination between AMP for email and then AMP for the website and changes in search, it almost brings up another question about the purpose of a website, because maybe you won't need to use that anymore. So it's a really interesting space. I think it's great for email. I think it gives lots of advantages. It removes lots of steps in the customer journey. And I think it really starts to bring a new dimension to the experience in the inbox. Just being able to go in and just reply to a comment and not have to open the document and just do it all in the email campaign alone is so useful. I just think its use cases will grow and grow and grow. I think it's a real exciting area.
Yeah, for sure. And the taking one of the ideas that you've just shared with us about using AMP for email or AMP for the websites, and don't you feel that sometimes we use each the channel as a silo, and we see it as a silo instead of giving multi-channel experience whenever the same user, which is the subscriber, but also the user on the website, is reaching our brand. So sometimes we use these channels as silos, and it doesn't communicate with the other the channels that we have, like websites, landing pages, whatever. But if we integrate all of this information about the user and we understand that it's the same user across the other channels that we have, social media, landing pages, websites, email, it's the same user. So if we use all of this information about the subscriber, or in this case the user, and it's all interconnected, maybe we can give a better experience to our audience whenever they reach our brand. Don't you think it could be a competitive advantage for the companies or brands that are leveraging all of this? What's your take on that? What do you think it could be a better? What are the challenges for the brands to really give an omni-channel experience to all of their audience?
Yeah, there's a couple of challenges here. So first, it's working in silos. So lots of different people responsible for different parts of the customer journey, not talking to each other or not having shared plans, means that it's, okay, we've got email over here, we've got social media over here, we've got PPC over here, we've got SEO over here, and then it's not a joined up approach. And I've always been interested in on a full customer journey, whether I've worked just and focused on one single tactic or many tactics. So it's really important to think about, well, what happens once somebody's clicked through, the subscribers click through from the email? Where do they go? What's that experience look like? Because that could have a huge impact on the next email campaign, but also your website performance. And all of that needs to be fed in together. So I'm quite a data geek, so I like to see all the statistics across the whole journey, not just the email campaign. I think that's really important. The other part here is strategy, and I'm really passionate about strategy. I've just written a book about marketing strategy. I feel like there's a real misunderstanding between strategy and tactics still globally. I think this is a problem across the whole marketing industry. And so much focus is on tactics and not on the strategic element of, okay, what are our objectives? Who are we targeting? What is the plan here? And then thinking about the channels afterwards. Whereas it seems to be a role reversal where actually we focus so much time and effort on the content, the imagery of what we're sending, and we don't think enough about the objectives, the plan, whether or not this is the right thing for the customer, not is it the right thing for just us as the organization. There has to be a balance, and the focus should always be on the end customer. And I've got a real passion for this. I teach as well, and so I see right from the very beginning, from apprenticeship, where apprenticeships are following Gary Vee, who talks so much about tactics and not about strategy, and it's really frustrating because that seed is already planted at the very beginning of a marketer's career. And for us to create really great marketing campaigns, you have to have a strategy. It doesn't have to be a long-winded process, but we need to have some form of plan. And this is where it goes back from that batch and blast approach that I see in Portugal, where the strategy piece is lacking. It's very heavily tactical driven. So I think those are the kind of two key areas for me.
Oh, I didn't knew about your book. I'm going to place a link on the description for sure, because it's so important that everyone knows about the importance of having a good strategy for the marketing, and that's mainly because everyone is so, as you said, so focused on the tactics and the pushing buttons, as one friend usually says to me, instead of someone that the pushes buttons. It's much more important to have a complete strategy for everyone that it's pushing buttons. It's going to increase the leverage of their work, because they are all working together in this case, and accomplishing a goal for the entire brand, and not just focusing on that particular tactic. And as you've said, it's so important that everyone knows about that. So I'm going to place the link for sure on the description. And one of the things that I believe our audience is going to find it very interesting. One thing is for us to say that strategy is so important, to have all of these best practices are so important. However, sometimes they need to see real value on the other end. What are the outcomes they can have by applying all of these that we are saying? Do you have any real case study or something that they can see how, by implementing all of these things that we are saying, is going to deliver a big result for them? It's something that you can share with us?
Yeah, definitely. So I worked with my agency worked with a global organization that were struggling to get the engagement levels that they wanted from email, not just looking at opens, but looking at clicks, and then looking at revenue and time spent on the website was all much lower than they wanted across their global database. And their objective was to increase that, but they had a target in mind, and they put their plan in place of knowing what types of content that their customers really liked. There was lots of analysis that we conducted for them to help identify, okay, this is what the interests are of the subscribers, and this is like their planning piece. And then it was, okay, so maybe we need to think about having a technology here to help with that. It wasn't a case of there's this really cool tech, let's use it. It was a case of we've got a challenge here. We need to achieve these objectives. And this is what our customers are demonstrating they're interested in, but we're struggling to find out anything else about to do this at scale. It's a global organization, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, really difficult at times to have that type of system up and running in an intelligent way. So the technology piece that was trialed for this was AI. in email, so both subject lines and in the content. And it was, I mean, it's amazing. I think AI in email really is an amazing area when it's used with strategically and it's got a plan, not when it's, okay, this is really cool and everyone's doing it and I need to do it as well. Then it doesn't work as well. But for this particular brand, they saw a 50% increase in their engagement within 3 months. And they also saw an increase in revenue. I think it was about a 30% increase in revenue. It wasn't just an increase in opens and then, okay, no one then clicked through, because the content was also matching those subject lines that were engaging their audience. And the machine is learning, it's getting more intelligent. More campaigns that you send and you feed it to the AI technology, the more sophisticated it gets for that particular audience, for that brand. Really is very, very clever technology. It worked wonders for them. And that was just one trial basis within 3 months, which is just astounding. So you think of the investment that goes into it, because it's not the cheapest piece of technology, but they had already covered those costs within the first 3 months. So then they rolled that out globally. And what was a really interesting thing for me for this whole kind of experiment, really, to see if this technology was going to work and achieve their objectives, was that it was testing 10 subject lines, 2 human-based subject lines, and the rest generated by the machine. And it was really interesting to see the difference in performance of the human subject line and the AI-generated subject lines. You would think, if you just looked at it, and the team themselves at the brand thought, well, that isn't going to engage in the audience. It's like the number one winner of the ones that they didn't think was going to, and the lowest performing ones were the human-generated subject lines, which is really interesting. It's quite telling, isn't it, that it's very difficult to be creative with subject lines every time you send a campaign. And what we might think works doesn't necessarily connect with our audience. So from that perspective, it also generates a lot more intelligence, a lot more data, a lot more insight about the target audience, not only for the words and phrases and timings that work for the audience, but also what's engaging those clicks, what's engaging the revenue, what's engaging that time spent on the website from a content perspective. And doing that at scale, you just couldn't do that as a human. You need the machine. So that, for me, just demonstrates if you've got your clear objectives, you've got a clear plan, and then you've got a technology that can help achieve that, you can really achieve some amazing results.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really putting the numbers where we say that it's the best strategy, because in this case it's clear the advantage that the brand itself has got by implementing the best practices and doing what a really good strategy was calling for. So yeah, thank you for that, for sharing that experience. Recently, I've seen a case study very similar to what you've said. It was by Adidas, I guess. They were using AI to provide a very personalized experience to their the subscriber lists around the world. It was a huge database, as you can understand by the global approach of this brand. And what they've seen, it's besides the increase of sales, which obviously it's very important. However, besides the increase of sales, what they've seen was a very high engagement rate, and the good feeling about the brand itself. It's something that it's not measurable, it's not the tangible. However, it's going to work for a long time for the brand itself, because the users were receiving an email with the exact sneakers they loved, for instance, or the kind of clothing they are much more interested in than the other kind of formats. So it's something that they really cherish, and they are going to think that, wow, the brand is going to send me really an email that it's only for me, it's very personalized just for me. And that was just possible because they were using AI and not just using the human approach, which would be almost like impossible because we just have enough hours in the day and we have two hands and one brain. So it would be very difficult for us to do, and it's very easy when you have this kind of approach of AI. Good. So we have some juice for the marketers that are thinking if this is going to work or not. So the data is here. In this case, I know this interview it's already a bit extensive. I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to delay you that much more. So I'm going to ask you something. Can you share 5 tips, the best tips that you could deliver to any brand marketing team to implement right away? What would be? So if you can share that with us, it would be awesome.
A mixture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think first of all is strategy. You need to define it at a business level and at a marketing level. And it's quite amazing actually how many organizations don't necessarily have clear objectives as a business. And that makes it really hard for strategy for the marketing department to actually align themselves and demonstrate what they've delivered for the company. Because if the two aren't aligned to each other, then it will always feel that marketing's not really delivering anything. And that's because there's no clear business objective. So that's really important. The customer, what is the value to the customer of what you're sending and your whole entire marketing? What value is it to them? Because it might be really, really valuable to you as a company, but is it really, really valuable to the customer? Because if it isn't, you won't engage them, you won't keep them, and they won't come back to you. So it's really important to get that piece right. Data, I think is a really important area. We've talked a lot about data actually. Think about the data that you're collecting, and if you're not collecting first-party data, you need to start really focusing on that area. And what does that data tell you? What behavioral data do you have that you could use? It doesn't have to be an extensive piece of analysis if you don't have the resources or time or budget for that. Just having a look to see what your number one clicked piece of content was in your email, what that looked like in social, what that looked like on your website, and comparing. You can start to then take some real learnings from different channels and map them together, and create that full customer journey piece. Tactics, don't rush and run to the next tactic. So many people ran to Clubhouse, and it was a really interesting thing to watch actually. I was a bit dubious about Clubhouse, to be honest, and I wasn't overly keen on the privacy side of things of Clubhouse. And then there's been the whole API exposure last week, and usage has just dropped off a cliff. So try and not just run after the latest tactic. You really need to think about your audience and the strategy that behind that. And then finally, technology. So do not choose the tech before you've thought about your objectives. I see this time and time again where lots of investment goes into technology and nobody's thought about how it's going to achieve the objectives that you have set, either as a marketing department, as at a channel level, or as a business. And then you become really deflated with the technology because it doesn't necessarily fit for what you then decide that you want to do with it. Or actually, because you weren't really clear on what you wanted that technology to do, it hasn't been configured in the right way. And we see this time and time again where I help companies reconfigure technology. So really think about that strategy piece at the beginning, the objectives, and then choose the technology, not the other way around, because it's really difficult to back out then when you've integrated everything and then you realize it's not actually going to do everything we want it to do. So that's my top 5.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm sure that everyone that is watching this is going to value all of those insights for sure. I just have one final question, which is a bit the tricky. In this case, I'm going to ask you if you have some question that I still haven't asked you, and you think it could be a good question to share your experience with our audience, and eventually I haven't done that question.
Oh, that's a tough question, that one. I think it's the toughest one of all. I think the one question I get asked most often by marketers is how do you keep up with, because it's changing so much. What should you do? Should you do a course? How do you just keep on top of it, keep your finger on the pulse of things? And my approach to this that I always recommend is just to keep reading. I read a lot, both articles, books, watching different videos from both on YouTube, like TED Talks, for example. It doesn't necessarily have to be purely marketing focused. Getting your headspace out of that sometimes is really useful to getting your creative juices flowing and having new ideas. And I'm always, Twitter for me is a real source of information, both of people to follow, but, having different perspectives and opinions, I think is really valuable and feeds in then to question and challenge your own thought perspective. And I really like to be challenged. So in the email council, we're all quite a strong, opinionated bunch, as I'm sure you can imagine. And there's 20 of us on now Zoom calls, and we'll challenge each other. And I find that some people really hate that, but I actually really like it because it pushes you to think in a different way. And that's how you learn. And to not be frightened about not knowing something. I don't know everything. It's impossible to know absolutely everything. But I'd have people to go to ask the question and find out more information or research it and find out more and just be curious in that. I think you can never lose your curiosity, and you're always learning in marketing. You never stop learning, and that's how you keep your finger on the pulse, really, of everything that's changing all the time.
Wow, I couldn't end this any better. So thank you for the question and the answer as well. So yeah, thank you for so much to be here and for your courage. Also, to be the first interview for my channel, Marketing Done Right. I hope it was also interesting for you to share your experience. And the final thing is to ask you where can people find you if they want to work with you or ask you anything. What's the best approach to get in touch with you, of course?
Yeah, Twitter's good. So at Jenna Tiffany, LinkedIn's good. Just / Jenna Tiffany there as well, or my website, letstalkstrategy.co.uk. And, we're a small team of experts, but we're here to help answer any queries that you might have or support, even if it's just a one-off campaign, we're here to help for that.
Thank you so much again, Jenna, for this interview, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. It was very insightful for everyone, I'm sure, including me. I'm so pleased for having this interview with you. It was a complete pleasure to have this little chat with us. And also for your courage to be the first interview that I have here on Marketing Done Right. I hope we can catch up in the future. And again, thank you so much.
Same to you. Muito obrigada, Deja.
I hope you've found this interesting. It was a complete pleasure for me to have this chat with Jenna Tiffany. It was a privilege to have her as a first interview for the Marketing Done Right. It's something that I'm trying to do on a regular basis from now on. I'm still going to share my individual opinions about everything because I have, and unfortunately for you, I have a lot to say, but this kind of insights with this kind of the professionals so interesting like Jenna, it's something that I think you can value. So I'm going to share that more in the future. And if you want to know more about Jenna Tiffany and her work and her book, I'm going to place every link on the description of this video or podcast if and when it's going to be ready. Okay, so thank you very much. Please like this video, share with your friends. It's important to share this kind of information with everyone because they are going to benefit from Jenna Tiffany's insights for sure. Okay, bye bye, see you soon.